Time now for a spoiler-free movie review. Let's talk about Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear, say it with me. Although I feel that this movie is unspoilable because all it is exactly what it says in the title. A bear does cocaine, you get Cocaine Bear, based loosely on a true story. It's about this 500-pound black bear stumbles upon some cocaine in a Georgia forest, takes all the cocaine by ingesting it, eats all these bricks of cocaine, and then goes on a cocaine-fueled rampage, killing a bunch of people in the forest and destroying a bunch of things. That's really all you need to know going into this movie. And I had somewhat high expectations, oddly, for this movie because I felt like it has such a sexy title. It has a really good cast and a good director. I wanted to go into this movie and I wanted this to be a movie that I could go into, completely disconnect from reality, and just enjoy a bear on cocaine. So before I get into my full thoughts of this movie, here's just a little bit of the Cocaine Bear trailer.
Millions of dollars worth of cocaine fell from the sky this morning in Knoxville, Tennessee.
There's more of this out there. They dumped it somewhere.
I'm looking for my daughter.
Forest is a dangerous place.
A lot of cocaine was lost. I need you to go and get it.
No, don't eat that, don't eat that. Let's see what kind of effect that has on us.
So what this movie is about. So we know what this movie is about. The bear does cocaine. But what I wasn't expecting from this movie that ended up doing... So that's really all you need to know going into this movie. It's about a bear who does cocaine. You don't need to watch any other movie leading up to it, which I know they did some promos surrounding this, kind of poking fun at all the Marvel movies. You don't need to watch Cujo. You don't need to watch Jaws. You don't need to watch Anaconda or You don't need to watch Anaconda or Lake Placid. This is the only movie you need to know going into this, so they poke some fun at movies like that. And I think that's kind of what we need in this world of reboots and remakes and everything interconnecting. We just need a really good movie that at the core of it embodies all the things that people go to the movies to do. And it's what I said earlier, disconnect from reality, watch something completely ridiculous, but also well done, which I think is the key difference here in Cocaine Bear. So aside from just the fact of it being a bear going on a cocaine-filled rampage, I think what Elizabeth Banks, who directed this movie, did a really good job at was interweaving the storylines between all the other characters. So you have all these other things going on that you actually care about. And I think that is important with a movie. And I think that is important with a movie as ridiculous as this being the plot. And I think that's important for a movie with a plot this ridiculous, is to give us some experiences with these characters. And although it's not like the most well fleshed out storyline or characteristics, and even though it's not the most fleshed out characters of all time, it gives you a little bit something more to grasp onto, to where it's not just, it gives you something a little bit more to grasp onto, which I think is what kept this movie being from which is what ended up keeping this movie being something like Sharknado, that is fun on a very small level, but aside from that, there's no real substance there. What you have in Cocaine Bear is, what you have in Cocaine Bear is the interweavings of all these other characters' lives. You have the people connected to the drug dealer who dropped all the cocaine in this location. They are there trying to retrieve it and getting it back to the drug lord. So that is where Ray Liotta and O'Shea Jackson's character come into play. And then you have Kerry Russell and her daughter, who she and a friend went out into the forest after skipping school. Kerry Russell finds out that's where she is, and she goes to try to rescue her. You have a group of punks who have been terrorizing people You have a group of punks who have been terrorizing hikers, and then you just have some other hikers and park rangers who just happen to be there and get thrown into the mix as well. So you have these interweaving storylines, which I always find entertaining because once one storyline gets boring, you move to the next one, you go to the other one, and then it all kind of comes together in the end. So there's at least something there to grasp onto. Aside from that, it's pretty nonstop action throughout the entire movie. So there was always something to look forward to when. Aside from that, it's pretty nonstop action. Not a whole lot of dialogue or story building you really need to get into in this movie. And what I think I really enjoyed. So I think at the core of this movie, if you had to kind of put a scale of killer animal movies, I would put Jaws up there at the very highest you can be, the very highest level of killer animal movies. And at the very bottom, I would put another shark movie like Sharknado, where still in the same category, but just completely ridiculous. And in the middle, I would put movies like Anaconda and Cujo. So I think that is where Cocaine Bear lands, right there in the middle of completely ridiculous, but also still grounded in reality to where it doesn't just feel like you're watching something too bizarre the entire time. And the violence in this movie is pretty exaggerated, but kind of in that same vein of it not being completely out there ridiculous. The kill scenes are pretty gruesome and violent, and there's a lot of blood, some intestines, so it gets pretty intense. But it never feels campy in any way. It's more on the horror level style of people getting killed than it is on the comical style. And the thing you have to suspend the most belief on is the fact that this bear could take all this cocaine and not die from a heart attack. So aside from that, you end up kind of rooting for the bear. The bear didn't do anything wrong. It stumbled onto the cocaine and then formed this addiction. And a result of that is just killing everybody who comes into its way. And a result of that is just killing everybody it encounters. But the thing I took away the most about Cocaine Bear was the in-theater experience. I saw it on a Thursday night, and the theater was very alive. All the seats were filled in my movie theater. But the thing I really took away from Cocaine Bear and why I think it's a movie that we need right now in the world, it really came down to the in-theater experience. I went into a packed theater on a Thursday night, and everybody there was just wanting to have a good time. And there was a very diverse and there was also a diverse crowd. And there was also a diverse crowd. I sat next to a woman probably in her late 50s, early 60s, somebody I really wouldn't expect to go watch a movie like this, but had a great time the entire movie, was laughing at things and commenting on things. And I think that is a movie. And I think this is a movie that warrants that. You don't really have to pay attention to the plot. You don't have to focus in on anything and have complete silence. That camaraderie and that laughter add to the experience of this movie. And I think that is what we need. I think my favorite performance was probably O'Shea Jackson, just because I really liked his character. And he kind of had a character arc. He went from being just a bad guy trying to get the drugs to having his character also had a little bit of a character arc that I wasn't expecting. And then you have Kerry Russell, who I haven't seen in anything in a while. And then you have Kerry Russell, who I haven't seen anything in. And then you have Kerry Russell, who I don't really remember the last thing I saw her in. But you realize that she is a really great actress, even in this situation. And I think that is what will make this movie set. And I think at the end of it, and I think at the end of the day, that is what separates this movie from Timothy. And I think at the end of the day, this is what will separate Cocaine Bear from some other bad movies that may try to replicate this formula of just giving a different animal a different substance or just putting another animal on cocaine, is the fact that they were able to get some really good actors to make this story believable. So aside from the violent nature of this movie, at the core of it, it is a comedy. And I think that is... So aside from the violent nature of this movie, I still wouldn't consider it a horror movie. I would consider it a comedy. And I think when it comes to just making a straight ahead comedy, you're probably going to fail. But if you add something... So you have to add something else. It either has to be a horror comedy, an action comedy. There has to be something else to a movie now to resonate with us and actually make us laugh. And this movie did that because of its ridiculous nature and over-the-top gruesome violence, but also adding some jokes in there, adding in some callbacks throughout the movie. I think this made this one of the funniest movies I've seen. I think that made it one of the funniest movies I've seen so far this year, and probably will because of that bond it formed with just these strangers I was in a theater with watching a ridiculous movie. So I hope they make a sequel to this movie. So this is a movie I wasn't expecting to feel this way afterwards, but I think it warranted a Cocaine Bear 2, maybe even a Cocaine Bear 3. I think they may have something here. That'll get audiences and people like me who just want to go and watch something completely turn off your brain. And also that's not so interconnected to a bunch of other movies. And also this movie is only an hour and a half. This movie is only an hour and a half. I think they recognize that you're not really going to be that. And also this movie is only an hour and a half, which I think they probably recognize that there wasn't enough story to make it any longer, or also that people wouldn't have the attention span to focus on some... I think they recognize that they didn't have enough story to make it any longer, but just the plot alone doesn't warrant more than 90 minutes. So I think that was also key into keeping me entertained throughout this entire movie. So as much as I enjoyed this movie, I do feel like it has a little bit of a threshold. Nothing with a plot like this, and nothing with a plot like this, I think would enter the 4 range on the rating scale. So it's at the very tip top of what a movie like this could be. So for Cocaine Bear, I would give it 3.5 out of 5. So for Cocaine Bear, I would give it 3.5 out of 5 duffel bags.